The young and the restless spoilers, the quiet hum of Genoa City was being replaced with the low rumble of impending chaos. It was a strange thing to witness, the city that had always prided itself on its wealth, its elegance, its polished exterior, now teetering on the edge of a full-blown corporate war. And at the center of it all was Cain Ashby, the man who had played the part of the villain so well, yet now found himself stepping into a role no one had expected. The ambitious, calculating tycoon who had returned to Genoa with a singular goal, to claim it all. But Cain wasn't fool enough to think that he could do it alone. He needed allies, people who could help him manipulate the power dynamics of the city, people who weren't afraid of playing dirty when the time came. And though he had no shortage of enemies, the few he could count as allies were the ones who would tip the scales in his favor. Phyllis Summers, of course, was at the top of that list. She had never shied away from taking down anyone who stood in her way, and Cain had known from the start that her ruthless streak could be bent to his will. She had always been more than willing to act as the shadow queen behind closed doors, pulling strings while the Newmans and Abbotts were busy fighting for the spotlight. But Billy Abbott, that was another matter entirely. Billy, despite his personal history with Cain and his tangled emotions toward Phyllis, was a wild card. Cain had no doubt Billy would eventually come around, he was far too smart not to see the value in aligning with the highest bidder. But for now, there were doubts. Billy wasn't sure what kind of man Cain truly was, nor what he wanted with Genoa City. Billy had his own demons to wrestle with, and aligning himself with Cain might just push him too far down a path he wasn't ready to follow. So, while Cain played his game with the city's elite, he also had a more personal chess piece to deal with, Audra Charles. Her failure to seduce Kyle and Nice was not just a personal blow for her, it had sent ripples through the already fragile network of alliances that she had been trying to build. Her plan had been simple enough: charm Kyle, make him doubt his relationship with Claire, and secure a position within the Abbott camp. But it had backfired in spectacular fashion. Not only had she failed to pull Kyle away from Claire, but the betrayal had also made her look weak in front of Victor Newman, someone she had hoped would be her ticket to power. Victor's cold withdrawal of his financial support for her new venture left Audra reeling. She had expected Victor to be a stepping stone, not a roadblock. But she wasn't done. She had always known how to survive, how to adapt, and she wasn't about to let one setback destroy everything she had worked for. The problem was, with her connections to Newman all but severed, she was running out of options. And then there was Cain. Audra hadn't expected him to call her after her failure in Nice. She had assumed that with his own plans in motion, he wouldn't have time to entertain her. But Cain had his own reasons for reaching out. He knew that the game in Genoa City wasn't just about money. It was about perception, about who could pull the strings behind the scenes and who could be seen as a valuable player in the long run. And he had always known that Audra, despite her slip-ups, still held potential. Cain knew that Audra had worked for Newman Enterprises in the past, and he knew that she had the kind of inside knowledge that could be invaluable to his takeover of Genoa City. Audra's ability to navigate the treacherous waters of corporate politics, particularly within the Newman family, made her someone worth keeping close. So, when he extended his hand to her, offering her a role in his growing empire, she hesitated, but only for a moment. "Why would you offer me a position now?" Audra asked, her voice cold but curious. "After everything that's happened with Victor, after my failure with Kyle?" Cain leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "Because you're still useful. You've been in the trenches with Newman. You know the ins and outs of their business, their weaknesses. And right now, Genoa City needs someone who understands how to fight on the inside." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be strategic." Audra looked down, considering his offer. "What exactly do you want me to do?" she asked. "Help me," Cain said simply. "Help me take control of this city. And when we do, we can split it, give you what you need. Power. Influence. Whatever you've been after all along." Audra's gaze met his, and she saw the fire in his eyes, the same fire that had driven him to manipulate and deceive. And for the first time, she realized that he wasn't just playing the same game as everyone else. He was redefining it. She nodded slowly, a small, almost imperceptible smile forming on her lips. "All right. I'm in." Cain's smile was one of quiet satisfaction. But as much as he was building alliances, there were still obstacles in his path. Lily Winters was one of them. Victor had approached Lily with an offer that was impossible to ignore. He promised her power, access, and control, a chance to not just survive the chaos of Genoa City but to thrive in it. The only catch was that she had to side with him against Cain. The history between Lily and Cain was fraught with pain and betrayal, and Victor knew that the wounds still ran deep. He promised her that if she worked with him, they could crush Cain's ambitions and rewrite the future of Genoa City in their image. But Lily wasn't so easily swayed. She had her own demons to wrestle with. Cain had lied to her, used her, and manipulated her heart. She still loved him, but love was no longer enough. She had to put her own ambitions first. She had to prove to herself that she could succeed without him. But could she trust Victor? The anger that had simmered for so long was now bubbling over. She wasn't going to let Cain get away with using her as a pawn, but working with Victor felt like a betrayal in itself. She was trapped in a storm of emotions, forced to choose between vengeance and the bitter taste of past mistakes. As the pieces shifted around them, the stage was set for a battle that would change Genoa City forever. Cain's ambitions were growing, and his web of alliances was expanding. But with every move he made, the risk grew higher. The city's elite were now playing the game, and the stakes had never been higher. Cain Ashby was no longer just the outsider. He was about to become the king of Genoa City. But in a game of power, betrayal, and broken hearts, there could only be one ruler. The question was, who would rise, and who would fall? Let me know if you'd like to continue with Cain's next strategic move, Lily's final decision, or how the tension between Claire and Audra escalates. There's so much more to unfold in this battle for control in Genoa City. Audra Charles had always been a woman of control. It was part of her allure, that razor-sharp intellect, the ability to see the game before others even realized it was being played. She had spent years building her reputation, climbing the corporate ladder with nothing more than determination and a calculated grace that kept her head above the chaos swirling around her. But now, standing in Cain Ashby's office, hearing the offer he had just laid out before her, Audra realized that control was slipping from her grasp. The past few days had been a whirlwind. Her failed attempt to seduce Kyle Abbott in Nice had been a disaster she hadn't anticipated, and the sting of it was still raw. Worse, Victor's cold withdrawal of his support had left her vulnerable. She had always known she was walking a tightrope, but it was one thing to be in control of her own destiny and another entirely to be at the mercy of those who saw her as expendable. Her previous dealings with Victor had left her scarred, and now, she was at a crossroads. She needed to find a way to stay relevant in Genoa City's high-stakes business world, and Cain Ashby's proposal, a position with Aristotle Dumas, his growing company, seemed like the lifeline she needed. But it wasn't just the position that caught her attention. It was the promise of something more. Cain was offering her the chance to oversee a major part of the company, something that would put her at the helm of one of Genoa's most powerful entities. But there was a catch. Cain had a history with her that was complicated, full of tension, flirtation, and unspoken emotions. They had shared a brief but intense connection in the past, and now, their paths were crossing again, with higher stakes than either of them had anticipated. Audra stood silently, contemplating the offer. "You want me to run Aristotle Dumas," she said, her voice steady but probing. "Why me?" Cain leaned back in his chair, his gaze unwavering. "Because you're the best at what you do," he replied simply. "And you've worked with Novak before. Holden and you make a great team. Besides, with your connections, you're a perfect fit for what I have in mind." Audra's mind raced. Holden Novak, her former partner, both in business and, at one time, in love, was part of this plan. The thought of working closely with him again stirred up something she hadn't expected. She had kept her distance from Holden for years, ever since their passionate, yet ultimately brief, romance had come to an end. Their parting had been amicable, but there was always an undercurrent of unresolved tension between them. And now, with Cain's proposal, she was being pulled back into Holden's orbit, a place she had tried to leave behind. She wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but the allure of a new project, coupled with Holden's presence, was hard to ignore. "Holden and I haven't worked together in a while," she said carefully, her mind still turning over the details. "But you think we can make this work?" Cain's smile was knowing, almost predatory. "I don't think it. I know it. Holden's ambitious, and you've always been driven. Together, you could create something unstoppable." The idea was tempting. But there was more at play than just business. Holden had been the one man she had ever let her guard down for, and now, as she looked at him in her mind's eye, she realized that there was still something lingering between them. Perhaps it was nostalgia. Perhaps it was unfinished business. Whatever it was, Audra couldn't deny that a part of her was wondering what might have happened if they hadn't parted ways all those years ago. Would things have been different if they had stayed together? Would they have been able to make their partnership work, both professionally and personally? As if reading her thoughts, Cain added, "You two had your time together. But you're both stronger now, wiser. Maybe it's time to pick up where you left off. For the business, for your future, for your legacy." Audra met his gaze, the weight of the decision settling heavily on her shoulders. Cain's words were calculated, tempting her with the idea of power and success, but she knew there was more to it than that. There was always more with Cain. He wasn't offering her this position out of kindness. He was offering her a chance to control something, to play a pivotal role in his takeover of the city, and perhaps, in some way, to reassert control over her own life. And that, more than anything, was what she wanted. But what about Holden? What about the feelings that still simmered beneath the surface? Working so closely with him could reopen old wounds, but it could also ignite something new, a spark that had never quite been extinguished. As she left Cain's office, the weight of the decision hung over her. She knew she had to act quickly, to make a move before Victor or anyone else had the chance to pull the strings further. And yet, as she made her way through the halls of the building, her phone buzzed. A message from Holden. "Are you seriously considering this?" it read. She paused, her heart skipping a beat. Holden wasn't one to reach out unless he had something important to say. She opened the message and quickly typed a reply. "I have to think about it. This is more than just a business deal." Holden's response came almost instantly. "I'm not asking you to make any decisions right now. Just remember what we had. And what we could have. Maybe it's time we tried again." Audra stared at the message, her pulse quickening. She hadn't expected this. She had assumed Holden would be distant, detached, but his words hit her harder than she expected. Was he serious? Was he suggesting that they could pick up where they left off, professionally and personally? Her phone buzzed again, and this time it was a call from Cain. "I'm still waiting on your decision," he said. "Time is money, Audra." She knew what she had to do. Cain wasn't going to wait forever, and if she wanted to make her mark, to regain control over her own life, she needed to act now. But could she truly work with Holden again, knowing the unresolved feelings between them? And could she take the risk of getting too close to him, professionally and personally, when the stakes were this high? Audra's thoughts were a whirl of confusion, desire, and ambition. She needed to choose. And the clock was ticking. Let me know if you'd like the next part to explore Audra's decision-making process further, how Holden reacts to her involvement with Cain, or how their rekindled romance complicates things within the business realm. There's a lot of potential for this tangled web of emotions, power plays, and unresolved tensions to escalate even further.